Hello, it's Ros
and Tilly,
and we're together. We're very glad to be together because we think this might be our last chance for
several months probably.
several months to come, as we all stop travel. And so we wanted to take the chance to do something together to share with our friends on YouTube and all of you. And I haven't been making videos this week because I've had so much coronavirus going on in my head and in my life and in my work.
And I even forgot to do bookish breakfast on Thursday.
No, bookish breakfast on Thursday.
I'm sorry.
But I will be, and because I think it's going to be really important in the coming months to
maintain our social connections.
Our connections with each other at a distance, and this is one way to do it. Yeah. And our National Poet Laureate, Simon Armitage, has been thinking along the same lines, I suppose, because he's written a poem especially for lockdown, inspired by how he's thinking and feeling about it.
I just say today is Poetry Day, International Poetry Day, or National Poetry Day, or something. So hence the poem theme.
So we're going to share his poem with you. It was published today for the first time, and it's in the
Guardian newspaper, the British Guardian newspaper, for Saturday 21st of March. Yeah.
And he said the reason that he feels like poetry matters at a time like this, and his words are so lovely that I'm gonna share them with you. He says that it's consoling because it asks us to focus and think and be contemplative. So at a moment when we're all running around being a bit panicky, we can pause for a moment with a poem. Now I'm going to explain something about the first half of the poem, just because it won't perhaps make sense to you if I don't, which is that he's been thinking about the village of Eyam in Derbyshire. And back in the 17th century, in 1666, the villagers of Eyam chose to quarantine themselves as a village because plague had come to them, and they wanted to avoid spreading it to the villages around because it had come on some cloth that had been delivered to the village. And they kept themselves in, and the surrounding people brought them food, and they left coins out in vinegar to disinfect it, to pay for the food that they were brought. And there's a really sad little bit in the middle about a couple, and one of them lived in the village, and one of them was outside, and
which kind of tells in the poem.
He would tell in the poem. So over to you, Tilly.
Yes. So, Lockdown by Simon Armitage. And I couldn't escape the waking dream of infected fleas in the warp and weft of soggy cloth by the tailor's hearth. In the old Eyam, then couldn't unsee the boundary stone, that cockeyed dice with its 6 dark holes, thimbles brimming with vinegar wine, purging the played coins. Which brought to mind the sorry story of Emmett Siddle and Roland Tor, star-crossed lovers on either side of the quarantine line, whose wordless courtship spanned the river, till she came no longer. But slept again, and dreamt this time of the exiled Yaksha sending word to his lost wife on a passing cloud, a cloud that followed an earthly map of camel trails and cattle tracks, streams like necklaces, fan-tailed peacocks, painted elephants, embroidered bedspreads of meadows and hedges, bamboo forests and snow-hatted peaks, waterfalls, creeks, the hieroglyphs of wide-winged cranes, the glistening lotus flower after rain, the air, hypnotically see-through, rare. The journey a ponderous one at times, long and slow, but necessarily so. Just to explain the second half as well, which I can only do because it is explained in the article, it references the epic Sanskrit poem The Meghaduta by Kalidasa, in which an exile sends reassuring words to his wife in the Himalayas via a passing cloud, and he persuades the cloud to take his remote message of love by explaining how beautiful the world is that it's going to pass over. And I think that's a really apt image in multiple ways, because it's about, we're all still living in a world that is beautiful and has wonderful things in it, and it's also about there are ways to share our affection for each other at a distance. Unfortunately, we have more reliable methods than clouds.
We have a different type of cloud now to stay connected with each other, which is going to be really important.
But I think it's just his imagery and the choice of words is absolutely exceptional. I think it's a really beautiful poem. I'm not sure the last two lines work very well for me, but other than that, I just love it. I think it's great.
You're very cheeky, moaning at a time like this. He's brought out a beautiful poem spontaneously,
in
time for National Poetry Day and us all going into lockdown.
I think all of it works beautifully well. Well, in terms of reading aloud, it reads very well. I know I stumbled over bits of it, but that last line was harder to think of how to read it. That's all.
That's all right. It's nice to know that your critical faculties have not been lost in the face of all she is mostly reading at the moment. You need to know, people, are like scientific articles about coronavirus, and
I can't keep up because so many are being published. So I just need to keep reading them
and to be ready to do her job. So on that note of both like beauty and uplift and connection, we should say
goodbye and take care of yourselves.
Absolutely.